They said the Blackwater place kept its own weather, fog that clung to the pines and a silence that fell like a hand. When I arrived as a new seamstress, the year was 1858, and the plantation smelled of wet earth and camphor. Master Whitfield welcomed me politely, but I saw his eyes linger on the narrow, white building behind the main house, the servants' cottage everyone spoke of in whispers. Inside that cottage, a woman named Marlow lived alone. The servants called her strange. The children hid when she passed, and Master Whitfield, he began visiting more and more, always in the late hours. One night, as I mended a sleeve by lamplight, the housekeeper slipped a folded scrap into my hand, a warning inked in a shaky script. Do not name her. Marlow was not like the other servants. She walked like someone with a secret rhythm. Her body held both softness and a quiet hardness. The women whispered hermaphrodite, behind cupped hands the name, mixed with fear and superstition. I did not ask. I learned the rules instead. Never touch Marlow's trunk. Never meet Master Whitfield's eye when he left her cottage. Never speak of how he lingered after midnight. At first it was small things. A tray left untouched in the hall, a candle snuffed out before the wick burned down, a lullaby hummed under the breath that made the house seem to tilt. Then people began to disappear from the quarters. A stable boy here, a field cook there. Some left tracks to the river. Some left nothing at all. Master Whitfield's visits grew longer. The other servants watched. Him bend down and speak in Marlow's. "Hear the way, men," whispered to frightened children. Things changed after his visits. The dogs refused to cross the yard. The cook's stew tasted faintly metallic, and late at night I sometimes heard Master Whitfield sobbing in the shop as if he had been struck by a cruel memory. One evening the housekeeper, Miss Calloway, cried as she told me what she'd found in the pantry. Pages from a small leather book, torn and stamped with a symbol I'd seen carved into an old willow trunk by the river. 2 circles locked together like a pair of linked rings. Miss Calloway said, "It's older than Mr. Whitfield. It comes from before he owned the land." Something in that book had bound the master and Marlow together. Curiosity pulled me to Marlow's room one night. The trunk, forbidden to touch, was propped open by a loose floorboard. Inside lay not clothes but a small jar of preserved things and a row of 19 pins stuck into a wooden strip and carefully labeled, in a hand that trembled between anger and prayer. Each pin had a name: the stable boy, the midwife, the mason, and beneath them, written in a darker ink, one more line: for his keeping. That night, as a storm drummed sheets on the roof, I heard whimpering behind the cottage's walls, a thin sound that could be a child or could be something older, calling in a voice that once had no home. On a night the frogs went silent. I watched Master Whitfield walk Marlow down to the river. They stood at the edge, 2 small figures against black water. He lowered his hand and placed something into Marlow's palm, a token, a rusted ring. She held it like a promise, and then, when she turned away, her face was a mask of grief and something else, worship. When they walked back up the bank, I realized I had been holding my breath the entire time. I did not know then that token would be my first clue and my last chance. Days turned into weeks, and the token, that rusted ring, never left Marlow's neck. She would polish it every dawn, whispering under her breath words none of us could make out. Sometimes I caught her talking to someone, though no one was there. And always, when I looked closer, her eyes seemed to be watching something behind me. At first, the other slaves avoided her out of pity, but pity turned into fear when the night animals started disappearing. The dogs refused to go near her cabin, and even the horses kicked at the air when she passed. Master Whitfield, however, only looked at her with that same twisted admiration, as if he were the only one who understood her. Then came the night of the screams. I woke to the sound of something thrashing in the barn, something not quite human. By the time we reached there, Master Whitfield was on the ground, claw marks deep in his chest, whispering one word over and forgive. And Marlow, she was standing in the corner, her eyes wide, her dress soaked in blood, though not a single wound on her. The rusted ring hung from her neck, glowing faintly in the moonlight. The others whispered that she had made a pact, that whatever spirit had taken her pain now demanded something in return. From that night on, the plantation never knew silence again. Every dawn brought whispers from the trees, and sometimes, if you stood by the river long enough, you could hear 2 voices, one pleading and one laughing. I should have left that night, but curiosity, like sin, has its own gravity. I followed Marlow the next evening, watched her walk, barefoot through the swamp behind the fields, whispering to the air like she was being guided by invisible hands. The moonlight caught the edge of that rusted ring again. Only this time, it wasn't rust. It shimmered, like something alive was pulsing beneath the metal. She stopped by a fallen tree, knelt and pressed her palms to the mud. The ground trembled, and I swear I heard voices, dozens of them crying from beneath the earth. She turned suddenly, her eyes meeting mine. But it wasn't her anymore. Something else looked out from behind those eyes. Its voice came through her lips, low and ancient. The master broke his promise. Now the land takes its due. I ran. But the swamp seemed endless, every direction the same, whispering my name. When I finally stumbled back to the plantation, the sky was bleeding red, and Master Whitfield's mansion was burning. Inside the mansion, screams echoed, not of pain but of confession. Master Whitfield cried out Marlow's name again and again, like begging forgiveness from something no longer human. When the roof fell in, I saw them, two shapes in the fire holding each other, the master's arms around her, her hands pressed to his chest and that same faint glow spreading between them, until both were gone. The ring melted in the heat, turning black. And yet when the fire died by dawn, it was sitting right there in the ashes, untouched. That night ended the Whitfield name, but the land didn't heal. The ashes turned the soil black and nothing ever grew there again. Some say Marlow was buried by the river. Others say she still walks the grounds, searching for the promise broken long ago. And sometimes, when the frogs go silent and the wind carries the smell of smoke, you can hear a whisper behind you say, "Do you want to see what love costs?" Weeks after the fire, I couldn't sleep. The smell of smoke still clung to the air, but it wasn't the fire that haunted me. It was her whisper, soft, like she was standing right behind my ear. One morning I went back to the ruins. The house was nothing but bones of brick and ash, but something called me to the basement, the same place where the ring had first been given. There, beneath layers of soot and burnt wood, I found it again, that same rusted ring, glowing faintly like a dying heartbeat. I picked it up, and a chill ran straight through my bones, because the moment my skin touched it, I saw her, Marlow, standing across the room. Her skin pale as river mud, eyes hollow, dress torn, yet her voice calm and almost kind. "You saw what he did to me," she whispered. "He wanted to own love, and love doesn't belong in cages." She stepped closer, and her face, it shifted. One side, Marlow, the other, the master. Their features melted into one another, like they'd become one soul cursed to never rest. I dropped the ring, but it didn't fall. It floated mid-air, spinning. Then from the shadows, dozens of other shapes appeared. The slaves who had vanished years ago, their eyes glowing faint gold, each whispering the same phrase. She set us free. The walls began to bleed, the sound of chains rattling, and I felt the earth shift beneath my feet. The ring dropped, rolled toward the doorway, and stopped. Carved above the doorframe were words I'd never noticed before. "Blood keeps the promise." That night the plantation sank into the swamp. By morning the land was gone, swallowed whole, as if history itself refused to bear its memory. Years later, a new family tried to build there. Their first night, the frogs went silent again. And the next morning, they found a ring on their porch, rusted, still warm to touch. They say love never dies. But in Georgia, it doesn't just live, it haunts. And when the frogs fall silent again, you'll know the promise is still waiting for someone new to break it. If you ever visit Georgia's forgotten swamps, and the night suddenly goes quiet, don't move, because the next breath you take might not be your own.